I've been putting off talking about an event that John Paul Miller's name was attached to until I received a couple of FOIA requests. I now have them, so here I am. This is about the death of Alexandra back in 2004. She was the 18-year-old who was supposedly having an affair with John Paul Miller and allegedly pregnant with his child before her death. Strong implications have been made that either John Paul or his brother Patrick had something to do with her death. Now, as far as I know, there was never any proof provided for these claims. It was just hearsay. Welcome back to the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and I'm so glad you're here. Before we get into this episode, I want to let everyone know that the merch shop has long sleeve tees, sweatshirts, and hoodies available now. They've actually been available. I just kept forgetting to make the announcement because squirrel. Now, onto our episode. I made a FOIA request for the coroner's report for Alexandra's death as well as the police incident report. The coroner's narrative report is very short and straightforward. Quote, "The victim took her bedspread off the bed and laid it on the concrete floor with a pillow. She laid down on it with a rifle laying on her body. There was a single gunshot wound to her right forehead with no exit. We believe this is a suicide. She left a note. Everything is consistent with a self-inflicted wound." End quote. And it's signed J. Dan Bellamy, Senior Deputy Coroner. The incident report from North Myrtle Beach Police Department has a lot more information on it. Quote, "Responded to 28th Avenue South for a suicide on 8/25/04 at 08:39 hours. According to the complainant, redacted, around 08:35 he heard his stepsister Alexandra's cell phone ringing in the room directly across from his. The phone was not answered, so he got up to tell his stepsister to answer. When Redacted entered the room, he found Alexandra on the back porch lying on a comforter and pillow with a gunshot wound to the right temple. A rifle was lying on her right arm and shoulder. A beer bottle and some prescription medicine was on the porch on her left side. Engine 731 and Horry County Medic 32 responded. Assistant Coroner Dan Bellamy notified 0850 hours. Alexandra was last seen alive at 2400 hours on 8/25/04. Estimated time of death, 0300. Victim suffers from anxiety and is taking Xanax. There was a Myrtle Beach blue citation, an envelope, and a small padded ring or jewelry box on the bed in the center next to the patient's pillows. Victim's room has a sliding glass door leading to the porch where she was found. Citation was for fighting. Stepbrother stated she picked him up from the airport around 2345 hours on 8/24/04. She was very happy and in a good mood. Last time he spoke or saw her was around midnight. Did not hear a shot during the night. Further stated that there is always a lot of fireworks going off in the area and would not necessarily know a gunshot from a firework. Detective Sheets and Sergeant Binkowski arrived to process the scene. Coroner Daniel Bellamy arrived around 0930 hours. Officer D. Rhea spread crime scene tape and logged entry to the scene. Rifle is a .22 caliber. Stepbrother states it was in his closet unloaded, along with a 12-gauge shotgun. 22 rounds were on the floor covered with junk. Stated he did not leave it loaded in the house. End quote. The rest of the report is noting when responders were in and out of the scene, and on the evidence sheet there is a note that the family didn't want the weapon returned. So let's pretend that someone from outside the home was the one who pulled the trigger. They would have somehow had to manage to stage the scene without alerting anyone in the house. So maybe they had Alexandra meet them out on the back porch with a comforter and pillow, and then they shoot her. But then they have to go into the house and leave the items found on the bed. And I think the note that the coroner indicated was left was probably in the envelope that was on the bed. So the intruder would have had to have written a note too, and one that was written in handwriting that looked enough like Alexandra's to fool her family. I'm guessing the ring box was from her wedding ring since she was married. Would someone, having just shot her, really have taken that much time in the house? And how would they have known where to find these items? The biggest question, though, is how would the intruder have retrieved the gun from her stepbrother's closet? They would have had to have known it was there in the first place. Get it out, find the ammunition that goes with it, and do all of that in what sounded to be like a messy closet without making enough noise to wake up the stepbrother. And even if the intruder had used his own gun to shoot Alexandra, he would still have needed the .22 rifle to plant. It's starting to look very unlikely that it was anyone outside the house. And I would think that if there was any question on whether or not it was a suicide, the stepbrother would have been investigated. I've seen a lot of comments that there's no way anyone would use a long gun to shoot themselves versus a handgun. In 2020, Johns Hopkins Medicine released the results of a 16-year-long study in Maryland that showed that rifles and shotguns were used more in youth and rural suicides. I think it's because they are just the guns that are accessible to them at the time. So if the only guns in Alexandra's house were long guns, that would explain why she used one. We have to consider that Alexandra's mother and stepfather didn't think her death was questionable. If so, they would have more than likely demanded an investigation. Whatever the note said must have been enough for them to prove that Alexandra's death was self-inflicted. The one thing that I found extremely interesting on the coroner's report was the name of Alexandra's stepbrother. I'm not going to release his surname because I have no reason to, and I don't want him to be harassed. But his name is John Patrick. Not only could his nickname be JP, but for his name to be John Patrick is just wild to me, considering John Paul and Patrick were the ones being implicated by some in Alexandra's death. Is it just a crazy coincidence, or did the names get mixed up in the telling over the years? The moral of the story is that I think that as content creators, we shouldn't ever release the story without the facts being checked first, especially if we're implicating someone in a murder. I understand that clicks and views are what bring in the money, but throwing out stories without proof is dangerous and sometimes just cruel. I learned that Alexandra's husband didn't know anything about any supposed affair or pregnancy and didn't even know who John Paul Miller was. Can you imagine 20 years after the death of your spouse, you hear a rumor that she was having an affair with someone like John Paul? I mean, the affair would be bad enough, but talk about adding insult to injury. And it was just a rumor. Someone told someone who told a bunch of someones. And that's not journalism, that's gossiping. I think in today's world of instant news, we're losing a lot of credibility because everybody wants to be first in reporting an event. I feel as though there are some who believe that if the word breaking isn't used, then it's not worth reading or listening to. I've said it before, but I strongly believe that it's better to be correct than to be first. Thank you for joining me here at the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'll be back soon with more true crime, but until then, stay safe and be happy.